Thank you very much. I've got the microphone on. Can you hear me okay? Good. Thank you. Look, I guess these are very informal events, so I'm quite happy to take questions, comments, observations, positive observations, please. During the talk, just interrupt me. It's about, I've got about 10 slides or so I'm going to go through. So I say very happy to take questions, observations on the way. This is talking about what we've been doing with Vale over the last couple of years. So Vale, I'm sure you're probably pretty familiar with them. They vie with BHP and Rio as being one of the top three. They all claim to be the top one for iron ore mining, depending on what statistics you choose to use. They've got coal deposits. They have deposits in Australia. They've sold those. They've still got coal deposits in Mozambique. They are the world's, I think, undisputably the world's largest nickel miner out of the Sudbury group, Sudbury area in northeast Canada. And they've got other activities going on. But by and large, they're an iron ore producer. 20 plus 24 mines, I think, in Brazil, in the north and the south. And they're a full scope miner, like most of the tier 1 miners. So they go from, they're at 75,000 people. Big shipping fleet, got ports, several ports in Brazil, one in Malaysia. Big fleet of ships. I think they've got the largest dry weight ton ships in the world, the Vale Max ships. So very complex sort of operation. They run from, of course, expertise in exploration through mine planning, geology, mine planning, mining operations, all open cut iron ore in Brazil. So mine, move, mill is the key processes for them, like all other uncut miners. Massive cost associated with that activity. Probably 50% of the running costs of the mine around that whole process. Milling, processing, blending, big issue for them, having so many mines and having to ship to China. They double handle in some cases where they can't get the big ships into the ports they want to go to. Got to unload and reload. So shipping lines is a massive issue for them. So the reason I tell you about that value chain, which I'm sure you're all more familiar with than I am, is to say this: AI, advanced data analytics, absolutely the flavour of the year. Right up there on the top of the hype curve, Gardner would say. And as a consequence, every man and his dog in Vale along that value chain are saying, I want some of that. That looks good to me. So Ali, who for the last couple of years has been driving their advanced data analytics activities, to which they are very committed, both sort of philosophically. They know that their business has to move in that sort of digital direction, as well as putting hard money into it. He's been leading that activity. With some success, working predominantly in this haul truck optimization area. Everyone along that value chain is now saying, I want some of that. Can you improve my exploration capabilities? What about right at the other end? What about how we tender for shipping contracts? Is there a smart way you can use AI to find the best time to lay a contract down? What about milling? What about drill and blast? What about load, haul, dump? How do those things fit together, and can we have an AI system to look at those? So the challenge we've got is to decide, where do you go next? Where's the best place to put your very limited resources? The other thing to say, what you could call double deep resources, deep expertise in the subject matter area, be it processing, be it exploration, associated with a capability in analytics, is a very, very rare animal to find. So it's extremely difficult. You can get lots of data scientists, but they can't interpret the results. So that in itself is a challenge, and Ali's working very hard on trying to skill people up and build a team and do whatever. So there's lots of dimensions to the problem of how do you introduce and use advanced analytics in a company like Varley in a sustainable way. So just like AI is a hype, I'm sure we've all been there where a champion gallops into the business, has an initiative, drives that initiative ferociously, and it is successful until he gets on his horse and charges up into the distance, and then it all sort of falls into disrepair, and people go, oh, yeah, I remember that stuff, yeah, we did that a couple of years ago, it didn't work. You know, we were just talking earlier about lean and what a fashion industry lean has been over the last 30 years or so. So there's a challenge of making any improvements sustainable, and ideally making them business as usual. How do you make them business as usual? Ford used to have a maxim that said, when 75 to 80% of the business is doing it, then you're allowed to call it business as usual. Up to that point, it's a proof of concept. So how do you actually lock it in? To do that is obviously not just about the technology. Technology plays a big part of the capability, the skills, but there's a whole host of other things you've got to think about that surround it. And the work we've been doing is about how to support the development of that environment. So that's what I'm going to talk about pretty broadly. Why are we doing it? I've talked a bit about this whole business of an analytics, a maturity model. How do you establish where you are in the business, and how do you establish where you need to move to, and then how do you orchestrate that movement? Pretty simple concept, really. So here's a statement of what the aim of this activity is to create a methodology and some tools, some reusable tools that the whole of the business can use, that can assess this cross-functional, multidisciplinary aspect in order that we can use it effectively. And effectively, I guess, is a word that then tries reusably in some sort of standard way. And those are what we think are the benefits that can come out of developing this approach, this methodology. One of the associated challenges, of course, is that when you go to a mine site with a capability, maybe a capability to optimise the use of fuel in a truck by controlling how the truck operates. The ability to deploy it on the mine is obviously very dependent on the mine, the skills of the miners, the skills of the operatives there. So you may well have a value proposition which is a very, very powerful one for mine A, but when you go to mine B, it's just impossible to deploy it at that mine. So how do you assess what the capability is at the mine site in terms of the skills, the infrastructure, etc. So if we can have a methodology that can do that, then we can assess it in a consistent way. We can have a repeatable, measurable way to test whether we've got the right skills. We can understand what skills we need, where we need to deploy them, etc. And we think there are then obviously benefits in terms of faster return on investment, reducing risk, etc. It's pretty self-evident as to why that may be a really useful thing to do. So, as a starter for this activity, there's some education to do, which is at least just to get people familiar with the sort of words and terms we're talking about, and to at least agree, it's like a common framework, or maybe even a common landscape. Something that says, well, do we all agree that we do want to move from bottom left to top right? Why do we want to move in that direction? Well, because we believe competitive advantage, and certainly from my experience in automotive and aerospace and other industries, moving up that axis, moving in this general direction does increase your competitive advantage. the ability to predictively model and understand what will happen next, and what is the best that could happen is clear. It's sort of self-evident to you guys. Your whole world is built around understanding how processes work and how to improve them and optimise them. If you can get out of this sense and respond world, which is predominantly where the mining businesses are, into this predict and act world, then that is a beneficial thing to do. Difficult line to cross here. One of the reasons is because it often involves external parties. It can involve OEMs, involve other people outside your direct sphere of interest. Even moving from here, where you've got basically functional reporting in the business, to being up here more generic across the enterprise is a massive challenge in itself. Once you get to this barrier where you're having to talk with third parties and get their agreement, that makes it even more challenging. So, we use that model to open the discussion really with the various stakeholders. And then say, okay, so we need some method of, this is what we're talking about now. If we can find a way of moving along this axis in a consistent, repeatable way, then that will drive us in this direction. I've got to say, that area down there is still a huge issue in miners. Getting good data, clean data. Don't even think about going in here if you don't have, if you don't have that bit sorted down here. And it's still a huge challenge in mining. So we then started working on what does this maturity, what does analytics maturity mean? Well, the next thing to think about is that it means different things to different people. So there's another dimension to it. To the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, maturity in analytics means something quite different. For the HR director, it's all about skills development. To the guy driving the truck, he wants to know what it means. What does it mean to me driving my truck? Does it mean I'm going to get different signals in the cab? They're going to tell me to do different things at different times. Well, why? Why is that happening? I'm the truck driver. I know what I'm doing. Well, if you can explain to him why that's happening and why that will put more dollars in his pay packet at the end of the month because he'll get greater productivity or whatever it may be, then there's a rationale. But just saying you will do it because I'm going to tell you to do it really doesn't work. So there's a great range of stakeholders who all have a slightly different view. So there are some of the views. So the view, a business view. These are, if you like, descriptors, sort of characteristics of what a level 4 that analytics is quantitatively managed means in terms of outcomes and deliverables. Productivity gains are being made from quantitative analysis, so you can measure them. There's something you can actually do there. In terms of vision and strategy, vision and strategy is being driven and includes advanced data analytics in the vision and strategy statements. In terms of organisation, what often happens in a business is processes change, technology change, and the organisation is set in concrete. The organisation doesn't change. Arguably, you need to establish what the vision for a business is, what its mission is, what its aims are, what its deliverables are going to be, what its characteristics are, what the processes are operating with those characteristics that will deliver that mission, and at that point you're in good shape to design the organisation. But of course what we have is an organisation which we then try and force fit all those other things into, because we have that organisation. Now, the world is what it is, so you can't wave a magic wand and change an organisation. But at least you have to recognise there are some changes and see what the value of those are. So there's a different view of what that would look like, and we use that to just open the conversation. So this is very much a work in progress, and the whole purpose of these sorts of all the things I'm going to show you today are that it opens the discussion and allows people to say, no, that isn't what I said. I think we're actually, I don't think we're down here. I think we're up here. We're really excellent at this geological analysis, well, you may be. You may be level 5. But that doesn't mean to say the rest of the organisation, business as usual, is at level 5. There will always be pockets of excellence in any business. And so it's trying to get that common understanding that may be really excellent there, but that doesn't mean the rest of the businesses, or you're integrated into the rest of that business driving excellence. So out of those discussions, we've created a set of templates to help us manage maturity around the activities associated with introducing advanced data analytics. So we know that if we raise some initiative to use some new advanced analytic techniques to control the operation of a truck, for example, we know that that's going to involve some changes in systems, some technology, some applications. We know it's for sure going to involve a mass of data about the truck performance, its operation, how it's working. We know it's going to involve people, the drivers, the fleet management system, the dispatchers and the like. And we know it's going to involve changing the process. How does that actually operate? How does that optimization fit in with the existing processes for controlling a truck, the fleet management systems and the like? What are the changes there? There are probably others as well. You could say, well, okay, once you put a system in place, a new process, how do you support it? What's the support model for that? So again, that's not complete. But we use those dimensions to open the discussion about, well, what is it that contributes to the maturity of applications and technology? Things like big data platform, collaboration, documentation sit in there. And again, these were open to discussion and have been subsequently changed through the workshops that have been held with Varley. The object at the end of the day is to create some sort of measure across those dimensions of where you are and where you want to be. So it's a very simple sort of radar plot. So the blue says that for this particular program, this particular new advanced data analytics technology we're seeking to introduce, you need to have these scores from 1 to 5 around those dimensions for your systems in order to be successful. That's what that program needs. It needs a score of 4 out of 5 around that particular dimension of the system's maturity. The red line is, this is where you are for your mind for that particular type of program. For a different program, looking at the optimization of maybe a comminution activity, then that blue line will be different. The B process will look different, and the mind's capability will look different in that space as well. So basically, the gap, if you like, is a measure, is a challenge you've got to close in order to move from where you are to where you want to be. Of course, interestingly, and a takeaway is that you don't need to be excellent in everything. You don't want to be excellent in everything. You may not need to be level 5 in that particular dimension of data management in order to execute this program. So you want to do enough. It's very much an 80-20. Do enough to deliver the program, because then you learn some money, and then you can do the next piece. So it's very much about that iterative process. Don't think you need to be 5 everywhere, because if you do, you'll never do anything. It'll look like total impossibility. You'll never move. So generally, we've been laying it out like that, and we've been then filling in these boxes in workshop environments with, so what does that particular dimension or that dimension mean in terms of data, in terms of processes? What do all these boxes mean? We know that a particular project will have a value, and we can scale that value for that particular mine. So we can say, for your mine, if we could introduce this, we could get this new piece of analytics working in the way we expect it to work, that could save you 20 million a year. Fine. provided you have the following profile in terms of these dimensions. Now let's have a look at where you are, let's have a look at the gap, and then let's have a look at what's the cost of closing the gap. Let's decide whether we're going to do it or not and what we need to do in order to make that change, and then let's see whether there's a return on investment. Now, return on investment may be a dollar return on investment. It may be other soft measures. It could be a change in terms of safety improvement or environmental improvement. Those are all dimensions Varley are looking at around this perspective. If we sort of zoom into to one of these, I think I've got one here. Yeah, so here's where we've been looking at shovel loading and truck hauling. And I've just taken that process dimension, that one there, and that's the sort of matrix we've got for that process activity that says, okay, well, here are the characteristics that you have in your business. The other thing we've done is behind this plane, if you look at this one, if you look at the systems one, I don't have the systems one here, the technology, that's a good one to look at in terms of maturity, because it's quite easy to recognise what's in the boxes. You've got a measure that says, well, are we actually using that technology? Because if you're not using that technology, then you can't say you're at level 4. You're just not doing it. Some of the softer issues, particularly around people and skills, can be very difficult to assess in a quantitative way. So I don't want you to think that this is really cast in stone. It's a discussion methodology to agree, and these are sort of slightly flexible. But it's the conversation and the discussion that flushes out what do we really think that measure is. Is that a real measure? Can you put a number on that? The red line here for this particular mine, which was the proof of concept mine, was where we think they are, again by negotiation. The green line is where we believe you need to be in order to use this piece of technology that's been developed, and of course the black lines are then the movement. That's what you've got to move for this particular mine. The profile of where you need to be is independent of the mine. That's the capability you need in order to use this new analytics tool. This is the piece that's changing. That's the piece that's mine dependent. And if you work out, do some analysis of what the cost of change is, then in this particular case, I'm not sure these numbers are real numbers, to be honest. But we're saying, okay, for in terms of process readiness, in terms of introducing, developing new processes, validating them, workshopping them, $500,000 to do that. There are similar panels for systems, that's application technology and data readiness. Notice data readiness invariably is the largest number because it involves a huge amount of data cleansing, and people tend to be very reluctant to throw their data away, even when it's proved to be flawed. There's then skills development, so you get a readiness score, and then there's the cost of actually implementing that, running the proof of concept, etc. So you can get some total cost, and then you can estimate what the value is, and you get a return on investment number that comes out of it. And we could do that then, make that assessment, the red line assessment, across all the mines. Now you may have a mine that's got, in this particular case, looking at, or in the case we've done recently, looking at fuel consumption. You may say, well, I've got a mine here with 100 trucks. I've got a mine here that's got 10 trucks. So the value proposition for saving 6% fuel consumption on 100 trucks is a huge number. Well, it might be. But the cost of doing that on that mine may also be huge, because you may have old trucks and they have no sensors on them, the comms network may be shot at. But there's a whole bunch of reasons why you may not want to do that. Maybe the workforce isn't as amenable to change as it might be at another mine. So it's not necessarily just scale, but you can at least use that and say we've got a consistent view of what we can do, and you can then start to get a more holistic view of what the opportunities are. What I've talked about there is mainly around operations. What's the dollar saving in operations? What's the impact of that change on maintenance, energy efficiency or safety? These are dimensions that Valia environmental is another view we've got that Valia are extremely interested in, and the senior managers are extremely interested in trying to get some overview, some quick snapshot view of where are we going with this stuff, where is it, where can it be applied, and what's the likely cost and value associated with that. You can then, of course, start to run that out across all your mines. I've just looked at sort of two there so far. This particular project, there are the dimensions. That's where we are. That's where we need to be. Where we are, where we need to be. It's the same profile sorry, that's where we need to be. The white dots, the red dots are where we currently are, which are obviously different mine to mine. And you can then get that sort of overview across all the mines. What obviously occurred to Valley immediately is that this is like, it's an internal benchmark tool we're looking at here. It happens to be focused on analytics. So they've taken this up now and said, so when we start getting this data back, we can start to look across all our mines and get some view of how those mines are performing from some other dimensions. So, sorry, the chart's so busy, you don't really need to understand any of the detail. But we're saying, well, we've got maturity. We can look at these dimensions: data process, people systems, data process, people systems, from an operational perspective, a maintenance perspective, a safety perspective, etc. And we can start to map mines. So now we can start to find mines which have got some particular problems associated with a dimension that's important for data analytics. And, this mine is generally poor in terms of managing its data, for example, or this mine has got some very old technology, which was not apparent before, or if it was apparent, it wasn't apparent, it wasn't clear in terms of what's the cost of that shortfall and what's the lost opportunity associated with that shortfall. So it's giving you a picture of where you should target your effort, particularly when the application of advanced data analytics is so widely spread across the value chain. How do you assess whether I should work on when to set shipping contracts versus when to try and optimize fuel versus when to do work on exploration? How can I get some way of assessing that so I know where to point my money and